Arizona, I'm Jennifer Longdon, State Representative in Legislative District 24. Welcome to another debrief. With me today is Representative Melody Hernandez from District 26 and Representative Stephanie Stahl-Hamilton from District 10. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Doing well.
Great. So we recently had a conversation as a caucus about the KidsCare program, a program that provides insurance to children here in the state of Arizona who need a little extra boost. And we talked about expanding that program, making an investment of roughly $12 million to insure an additional 30,000 children. Now, that conversation got animated on the floor here in the House. And I think this is a great time to talk about some of those things. So Representative Stahl-Hamilton, you told a story on the floor, and you've seen this from many perspectives as a, as a family, as an individual who's had insurance, has not had insurance, relied on these programs, and then not. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in this area?
Thank you, Rep. Longdon. Yes. So, as we all know, when you have children and young children and babies, your pediatrician is your best friend. And I am from Arizona, but had spent some time on the East Coast doing graduate school. And when my husband and I moved back to Arizona to raise our family, we found it awfully challenging to find quality, affordable health insurance. And found ourselves on access for a little bit, and eventually with income levels that translated into KidsCare. And KidsCare is health insurance that is affordable. We paid a monthly premium for our children. I've got 3 children. And it was an incredible program that helped bridge the gap for when my children were little and I was mostly an at-home mom. And then when I returned to work, we were able to access health insurance through my workplace. Fast forward a few years and there was job change, and we found ourselves, we were not able to get enrolled on the marketplace during the window. We found ourselves without health insurance. And I can't tell you how hard it is as a parent wanting to care for your child and having to look at child and say, we can't go to the doctor because we don't have insurance and we can't afford the fees. We can't afford to pay for your health care. And then fast forward a few more years, and I was able to do some work for Southern Arizona Children's Action Alliance in running a pilot program helping educators enroll their children in KidsCare. Teachers are in a unique position in where they make too much for access and don't make enough to afford the marketplace or to carry their own children on their own insurance plan. Those premiums are more than monthly mortgages sometimes. And so I had an opportunity to share my personal experience with educators in 5 school districts in Southern Arizona and help them understand that there is quality, affordable, accessible health insurance to them and their children. Melody sees this from also a different angle, but she has been able to encounter that whole issue of parents providing health insurance or health care for their children.
Right. And I would agree. So when families can't afford to get adequate medical care for their children, they end up in the emergency room. And Rep. Hernandez, you're a paramedic, right? You are part of the emergency medical system. So what does that look like for you when families can't go to the doctor regularly for their children? What do you see?
So to briefly answer your question, it's heartbreaking. I spoke of a family that I encountered when I was actually training to be a paramedic. I was doing a rotation in an emergency room, and it had been a slow day, and this group of people really were screaming for help and rushing into one of the hospital rooms. So being a student who was there to learn, I followed them inside, and there I found an infant who could not have been more than 5 or 6 months old. And this baby had been stung by a scorpion. So the younger you are, sometimes the side effects can absolutely wreak havoc on your body. And that's what was happening to this young child. They were having multiple seizures. They weren't able to control their limbs when they weren't seizing, so they were still kind of flailing around. They were experiencing something called nystagmus, which is when their eyes move back and forth uncontrollably. And this baby, the parents were there, and all they could do was watch in fear as their baby struggled to breathe and was screaming in pain. And at some point, what felt like forever, but must have been maybe a couple minutes, the doctor walks in and he says, your baby is going to need antivenom as treatment if they want to survive. And this baby will need at least 2 bags. The parents looked at the doctor and asked, how much does this cost? And in a normal situation, I have been in countless situations, countless situations, a horrible number of times where parents are put into a situation where their child has to get life-saving care. And I never, ever hear them pause like that. And so for this family to stop and say, how much does it cost? And to wait for the doctor to respond with $7,000. $7,000 for 2 bags is $14,000 on top of all the additional medical costs. The parents then asked, can we think about it? Because they did not have health insurance to cover the cost of this. And that was one of the few times where I had to briefly walk out of the room to go cry, because no parent should ever have to be in a situation where they have to think about whether or not they want their baby to live, where they have to think about the medical costs that they're incurring if they want their baby to live. No parent should ever have to be in that situation. And I walked back, and the parents had finally told the doctor, do everything you can to save our child. And after that, the baby got the care that they needed. I don't know how that baby is doing today, but I do know that family is probably struggling to make ends meet. That family is still probably paying off the medical costs that they incurred that day. And so that's part of the reason why, we had a conversation about KidsCare, but for many of us, we were fighting tooth and nail to get that coverage for those kids. I think it's part of the reason we all ran for office, is because we see how lack of healthcare, the lack of access to healthcare, how it impacts not only our own personal families like Stephanie, but like even ourselves. I know that Rep Longdon has another incredible story about how this impacted her. So I will hand it over to you.
Right. So thank you, Rep. I appreciate that. The cost of treatment, offering treatment is a lifelong thing. And I sit as a result of having not received that as a child. When I was very young, I came from a very large family, and my family struggled to make ends meet. And as a small child, I had strep throat. And, my parents, I'm the oldest of their 5 children. They had to choose between, and we all as parents make that decision. Is this the time to go to the doctor? Are we ready to go to the doctor yet? Right? Every sore throat, every earache. I think parents struggle with that decision and try to make the most prudent decision for themselves and their children. But in my case, my parents thought maybe we could tough it out. And my strep throat turned into scarlet fever, and then ultimately into rheumatic fever. And these are things we don't see that much anymore because we have better access to healthcare, and a few dollars in antibiotics stops these things from happening. But as a result, my heart was damaged at a very young age. So, in grade school, when I went to play kickball, sometimes I would faint with the exertion of the running. It got better. I was an athlete in junior high and high school. And then when I got pregnant with my own son, my heart condition came back, the strain on my heart of pregnancy. And I had a little tiny medical procedure. Well, it was a big deal then, and fixed my heart. And again, I went back to being an athlete. And here I find myself nearly 30 years later with another heart anomaly. And it's all related back to the damage that was done to my heart when I was a child, before I could read, before I could ride a bicycle, before I needed braces. That if a few dollars in antibiotics had come into my life at that point in time, I wouldn't be facing the high medical costs I'm facing now, and the loss of productivity that I'm facing now, and some of the issues I'm facing now. So ensuring our children, making sure they have adequate medical care, is not only the right thing to do from terms of compassion, it's prudent in terms of what it costs us as a system. Over their lifetime. And, I'm going to give it back. I'm going to go back to Stahl-Hamilton. You know what it's like to sit there through the night going, at what point do I call the pediatrician? And, what is it like when you're like, can I afford to call the pediatrician? What is this going to cost us? What's that like for you? Or what was it like for you?
There's a point of, there's a couple points. There's a point of shame. I can't take care of my child. I brought these children into the world, and there's this drive in me as a mom to want to do everything for my children, but also knowing, and Melody Hernandez referenced it, in that you calculate how much is this going to cost us. And so for me, I have followed KidsCare because we were on it. And like I said, when my children were a little bit older, I was able to transition my children off of KidsCare because I got a job that provided really wonderful health insurance. But it was also at that point that our state froze KidsCare. So for a while there, we were the only state in the nation that did not have a children's health insurance program. There was a time when my child he had an earache, an ear infection, and we needed an antibiotic. And, I called a friend who was a neonatologist, and I said, can you write my child a prescription? We don't have the money to go to the doctor. I was determined to do what I could for my kids, but it was hard. And like I said, there was a point of shame, and I was putting a friend at risk, asking for favors to care for a child. We should not live in a society where parents have to beg and for, to keep their children healthy. Premiums, you pay a premium, but it is affordable and it is quality. And we know that healthy children are productive children. They do better in school. They succeed on so many fronts. And I truly love that saying, what an ounce of prevention, what is it? An ounce of prevention is a
pound of cure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I love that. Let's do it now when it's little. I mean, that's true to your
Right.
story, Rep Longdon.
So let's ask Rep Hernandez. Rep Hernandez, what would your career look like if everyone had medical coverage? If instead of, calling for an ambulance, people could call for a medical appointment and do the routine care they needed, both as children and adults. And then I want to ask you, what do you think we should be doing now to get this done? Rep?
So my job, I think I would be facing a lot less fearful families. And I think that would lead to hopefully better outcomes. I actually just remembered over this past weekend, I worked another 48-hour shift, and a family frantically came up to a fire station, and then they called us to go over to their fire station, the guys who were there, because his family had a child who could not breathe. And part of the reason they went to the fire station first, because they were trying to determine, hey, is this something we have to go to the hospital for? Is this truly emergent? And so instead of calling the department to go to their house, they drove there to save costs. And instead of contemplating whether or not they should go by ambulance, they were saying, hey, are they okay to go in our car at least if they have to go to the hospital?
An emergency room visit can tank a family, and families are just trying to hold themselves together in the best way they can. Rep Stahl-Hamilton, what do you think people watching here can do to help us move forward with this issue?
It's real simple. We've got to keep the conversation going. And one of the ways you do that is to call your representative. Call and ask that KidsCare, an expansion of KidsCare, be put into the budget. We are only asking to move our income indexing to the median of where we are in the United States. I think right now we're like 47th, 48th for what we put into our children's health insurance program. And just by asking for the $12.1 million, we get a return of $47 million in federal money. That's money that's not coming from our state. $12 million ask to have KidsCare put into our general budget. Then the rest of the program will be funded by federal funding. So call, find out what LD you live in, pick up the phone, call your legislators, and send them an email and ask that KidsCare be put in the budget, a KidsCare expansion.
Yeah, $12 million is a lot of money, but $12 million in the course of what will be a $12 billion budget is an investment in our future.
Fight isn't over yet, and there are many countless opportunities to demand that we get KidsCare to protect our families.
Right, I agree. Rep Stahl-Hamilton, Rep Hernandez, thank you for joining me on today's debrief. I've enjoyed our conversation. So thank you both for joining me today. I appreciate that. And thank you, Arizona, for watching. This is the debrief. Thanks.